first-round draft picks Jaxson Dart and Abdul have given the Giants a small glimpse into a very bright future. But what can they do for an encore as the Giants host the Dallas Cowboys in their regular season finale this Sunday at MetLife Stadium? Let's talk about it next on the Big Blue Breakdown live. Hi, everybody. I'm Paul Dottino. Welcome back to another edition of the Big Blue Breakdown Live. I certainly appreciate you for joining us here during this holiday week. It's a special time. We're on Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We're usually on, as you know, Wednesday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. But because it is New Year's Eve tomorrow, we had to make the switch. So a very happy and safe and healthy New Year to everybody out there. And I certainly hope you have a very joyous evening tomorrow. But in the meantime, we hope you could at least enjoy some of our Giants talk tonight. We'll be here for at least 1 hour. I don't know, will we go 75 minutes or 90 minutes like we have the last few weeks because you guys demanded it? You kept hitting me up with your chats along the right side of the screen. You hit me up with a video call or an audio call. There you see the link right down below. All you got to do is use your computer or your phone, and you can participate in the conversation, and we certainly hope that you want to do that. But in the meantime, let's take a little bit of a look as to what the Giants are looking at on Sunday. Now, those of you who know me, and I've been doing this is now completing my 43rd season of covering New York Giants football. And I don't know how many different years or how many different companies you know that I've been with, and you have followed my work all these years. I have always advocated winning, and I still do. I am not one who is ever going to suggest lose to get a better draft position, because you see what I believe is, and you don't have to believe it. You can believe whatever you like. And I want to make that clear. You know, whether I'm on Big Blue Kickoff Live or WFAN on game day or doing this show, it's fine to have different opinions. So if you want to have a better draft pick, you are entitled to feel that way. I will not feel that way, so don't try to change my mind or convince me. I won't try to change your mind or convince you either. We're just going to live and let live and agree to disagree. Now, I will at least have some logical, realistic facts and rationale behind my point of view. You may have some for the other side. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But here's what I do know. Okay? Here's what I do know. It's all about who you pick, not where you pick. Because it doesn't matter what number you're at or how many picks you have. If you don't pick the right players, your draft becomes a bust. It's that simple. That's actual factual evidence. It exists. You pick bad players, you put yourself in a soup. It's that simple. You pick good players, no matter what slot you're in. If you pick good players, you will be a much better franchise. You will be in better shape. Those are facts. It doesn't matter what side of this argument that you're on. The facts remain. You have to pick good players no matter where the slots are. Okay? And I got to laugh when people say, don't you want more bites of the apple? Don't you want to have more picks? It means nothing if you pick bad players. Nothing. I could have 12 players coming out of this draft. And if I pick 12 bad guys, guess what? Those 12 picks were meaningless. So that's the bottom line. So I will not try to convince you otherwise. If you are a draft person who insists on having a, quote, better pick, go right ahead and believe that. Think that all you want. Keep it to yourself, though. because you're not going to convince me otherwise, and I'm sure I'm not going to convince you otherwise. So I will agree to let you live and let live, and you can believe whatever in the world you want to believe. Not a problem. Okay, let's talk about Giants football, because that's what's most important, as opposed to talking about some crazy draft that's going to happen in April. And when I say crazy, it's probably going to be crazy, because right now we think the first two picks might be quarterbacks. We don't know that, and a lot could change between now and then. So, yes, the crazy draft comes in late April. For now, let's talk about this football team. And I will get to your chats, calls, and whatever else you want to do coming up in just a little bit later on. First of all, the Giants are taking on a team this week in Dallas that has a very explosive offense. No one is going to dispute the fact that we know Dak Prescott, who is going to start, according to Cowboys owner Jerry Jones, and has never lost a game against the Giants while he has been a starter with the Cowboys. We understand his hex over this franchise. We also understand that Pickens has George Pickens, the wide receiver they acquired from Pittsburgh in the offseason, outstanding player, has over 1,400 yards in receiving. And C.D. Lamb has over 800 yards in receiving. So they've got some very dangerous weapons in the passing game. And tight end Jake Ferguson, you can throw him in there too. Javonte Williams, well, he's only rushed for over 1,200 yards this year. So they got a running game again. This Cowboys offense is pretty darn potent. There's no other way to put it. Now, I'm sure you guys will very well remember that back in week 2, Giants blew their first fourth quarter lead of the season and fell to the Cowboys 40-37. Yeah, we all remember it well, in overtime. We remember how Aubrey hit one of his robotic kicks on the last play of regulation and then hit another one at the very end of OT. It was a sign of things to come for the Giants, because that was only loss number 1. They would wind up going into week 18 with a combined 6 games that have been lost in the final 5 minutes of regulation or overtime. 6 games. And they are 3-13 on the year. Now, some interesting notes about what the Giants are doing right now, and I will bore you by delving into each one of the numbers and each one of the statistics, but here's what I will say to you. We know the Giants' offense in most of the statistical categories this year are in the middle of the pack. In fact, their 34 points they scored against the Las Vegas Raiders this past Sunday, when they blew the Raiders out by 24 points, and it was obviously their most lopsided win of the season. That was the 3rd time this year that they scored 34 points or more in a game. Jaxson Dart has been really good. In fact, he had a season-high 73% completion percentage against the Raiders. We know that rushing and passing, he's got 22 touchdowns and only 5 thrown interceptions. Suffice it to say that Jaxson Dart has been everything and then some in his rookie season for this team. And as any rookie would, he's had a couple of hiccups along the way. Yes, rough game against the Patriots. Yes, rough game against Minnesota. Other factors involved, but we get that. But it would be foolish and naive to have expected every one of his rookie starts to become stellar. That just won't happen. Most rookies in the National Football League are going to have their ups and downs. Every once in a while, there'll be a rookie who breezes through the season and barely has a hiccup. And we're talking about quarterbacks in particular. So, as far as I'm concerned, Jaxson Dart exceeded expectations. Now, as you know, I've always been an advocate of rookie quarterbacks sitting in their first season. And I don't back off of that. I still think that's the best way to go. But in this case, Jaxson Dart overachieved and outperformed the rookie curve. And the Giants are very fortunate to have that, because now they're in good shape for him to excel in season 2. Much like Williams has had success with the Chicago Bears, much like May has had success with the Patriots. Jaxson Dart right now is on that trek. That's what it looks like. It looks like he will take a big step forward because he doesn't seem to make the same mistake twice. And man, oh man, did he show signs of maturity against the Raiders, running out of bounds, knowing when to throw the ball away and not take a sack and instead just settle for an incompletion and live for another down. He took some significant strides in that game on Sunday. And those were important because he did show some stubbornness earlier in the season about wanting to run the ball. And even he admitted to me on the MSG postgame show live after the game that he realizes that there were times where he took some hits he didn't need to take. And that's the first time I actually heard him specifically say it that way. But that's what people have been talking about all season. And it showed that it has sunk in with him. And as we all know, actions speak louder than words. Well, his actions showed us, they really did show us that he is getting it. He is developing. He is maturing. He is getting smarter. He is getting wiser. He is getting more prudent. It's all good. And there is no reason to believe that the arrow is not pointing up with him. So that's where it's at right now. As far as I'm concerned with Jaxson Dart, it is all good. All good. Different story for Abdul Carter. His entire season did not mirror the trajectory of Jaxson Dart. His was a little different. Looked like at the beginning of the season, yeah, he had some good games, but not as impactful as you wanted. Then as things went on, we know about the missteps during the week at practice, not getting his timing right on different responsibilities he had to do. All right, so it got a little bit sketchy there. And then since week 13 against the Patriots, he has now done what no Giants rookie has done since the Elias Sports Bureau officially started to tabulate sacks in 1982. That is, Abdul Carter has been part of a sack in 4 consecutive games. The only Giants rookie to accomplish that streak since 1982. Now again, I remind you, Elias was not tabulating those official stats in 1981 when Lawrence Taylor came into the league. And basically, him and the sack exchange from the New York Jets were so incredibly impactful that Elias decided in the offseason they better start tabulating official sacks. Okay? So that's why, for those of you who are not aware and were not around in those days, that's why the official sack stats only go back to 1982. But nonetheless, the point holds. That is over 40 years ago. And here's Abdul Carter becoming the first Giants rookie to have at least a share of a sack in 4 consecutive games. I don't need to quote all the stats about the pressures and the tackles for losses and the quarterback hits. You folks have been on the internet. You're on the internet now watching my program. So you've been on the internet and you've seen all the stats. In the last month, Abdul Carter has been that guy. He's been that impactful player that the Giants got in the first round earlier this year. So while his season was a little bit more like an earthquake seismograph, right? Had its peaks and had its valleys. Abdul Carter is now on a very steep arrow pointing directly to the sky. So, why is Sunday's game against the Cowboys so important, specifically for those 2 players? Well, for 2 reasons. For Abdul Carter, it's a chance to continue that momentum upward. Now, I know momentum does not carry into the following season. There are too many months off. So let me take the word momentum back. Okay? I'll just take that word back. Let me rephrase, because semantics are important whenever we discuss analysis. It's important for Abdul Carter because at this point, the extra work, the focus, the locked-in mentality that he has had over the last month, the added accountability and responsibility that he has taken only provides more and more and more evidence on the field to him that this is what it means to be a pro. The more results you see when you put in that extra work, the more you're going to believe that that extra work will be valuable. And so Abdul Carter has busted his butt to become the impactful player that he needs to be over the last 4 weeks. The last thing in the world you want is to not see him get results on Sunday against the Cowboys. If he can finish this season after he finally decided to hit that switch and have 5 consecutive impactful games, it will do amazing things for his philosophy, his emotions, and prove to him that if he maintains a very stringent work ethic during the offseason, he can hit the ground running in week 1 next year, in 2026, and be dominant from the very first kickoff of the season. That's why it's important for Abdul Carter to have a big game on Sunday. Show him right to the very end of the season that when you work as hard as he is working now, it will result in some sweet highlights on the videotape. As far as Jaxson Dart is concerned, he has done so much maturing over the course of this season that when we've seen him have a little bit of a rough spot, as we did against the Minnesota Vikings, what did he do? He bounced back, stuck his nose to the grindstone, admitted to us that he studied even harder, and he's had a great work ethic all year long anyway, but was determined not to let a bad game happen again. He was committed to a rebound, and that's what he got. By any metric, it was one of his best 3 games of the season. And that tells you a lot about him as a player, as a person, as a leader. And so, once again, the Giants are playing a Dallas Cowboys team that has had its problems on defense. defense. Excuse me. Over the course of the last month, they've given up at least 34 points in a game 3 times. So this is I'm going to be careful here with my words, but this is an opponent that he should feel very confident in playing against. This is an opponent who you can have high expectations and say, Jaxson, you've shown us a lot. You've set a standard. You've set a high bar. Go ahead and show us that you can continue to do that against a defense that certainly gave it up for Russell Wilson. He destroyed them for a career high game in passing way back when in week number 2 in Dallas. So, by all rights, the Giants absolutely are well within the state of reason to tell Jaxson Dart, we want you to go out there and light it up. So whatever Dak Prescott does with the Cowboys, very potent offense, and again, they've always done well against the Giants, I've got no problem with Jaxson Dart getting into a track meet against him. And I think it'd be pretty fun to watch. If he needs to do that, to do it. And I fully think he's capable of doing it. And imagine if he were to outgun the Cowboys' explosive offense in Sunday's game. What a great way that would be to cap off the season for Dart by playing a sensational game against Las Vegas and then doubling up in back-to-back games by doing it against the Cowboys in the season finale. So those two guys, in my mind, there's a whole lot to gain by those two guys going out there and balling out and really, really putting forth a stellar effort and a stellar performance that would hopefully turn back the division rival Dallas Cowboys. Okay, so that's that. Let me flip it off to the other side for a moment and tell you that Charlie Bullen, who has been the Giants defensive coordinator now for 4 games, and we know what the Patriots did when he took over the job right away. He replaced Shane Bowen. They go up to New England, prime time. Patriots are foaming at the mouth. Vrabel's got them loaded for bear, trying to prove to a nationwide television audience that they're not a Trojan horse, that the Patriots are for real, and they're going to gun for the number 1 seed in the AFC. And the Giants ran into a buzzsaw. We totally understand that. The Patriots were not losing that game to anybody on that night. Period. End of story. They were going to roll, no matter who was on the other side of the field. And I give them that, and I tip my cap to the New England Patriots for that performance that evening. I don't know that they could play any better. Now, having said that, since that time, and actually including that game because it's a full month now, since Charlie Bullen has taken over as the Giants defensive coordinator, I won't bore you with the individual numbers or stats, folks, but the Giants defense has been right in the middle of the pack. They have been average, considering they were the bottom of the barrel before the coaching change was made. And then once Charlie Bullen took over this past month, they have been smack in the middle of the pack in mostly all of the most important metrics in the National Football League. So Charlie Bullen has made an impact, and he has improved this defense. Now, I'm not much into hypotheticals. One could only wonder, if he had more games to work with, what would be the ceiling for Charlie Bullen as a defensive coordinator? How many other games might he perhaps preserve leads in? Who knows? That's a hypothetical. That's nothing we can really spend too much time on here because what's done is done. He could only do what he was permitted to do once he was given the new job. And it's been pretty good. We've seen improvement in the Giants' rush defense in particular. We've seen improvement in the turnover ratio. We have seen Abdul Carter play his best football. We have seen Brian Burns continue to excel, named to the Pro Bowl. He deserves to be an all-pro, an all-NFL linebacker. I know he wants it, and darn it, he deserves to get it. We've also seen better play out of Dave Belton. And by the way, Bobby Okereke, was it 137 tackles, I believe, this season, tied. I think he's now in the top 5 of single-season tackle totals in Giants history. Interestingly enough, he's actually played his best ball of the season over the past month. I personally don't think these things are a coincidence. I don't. But what we know is that the season is coming to an end Sunday regardless. And no matter how much more I would like to see, because I'd love to see this team play some more games. I really would, just to see the maturity and the development. I mean, Darius Alexander, have you seen? Guy comes out of Toledo, small school out of the Mid-American Conference. And he has shown more flashes here in the second half of the season as he has matured and developed and started to get his sea legs. And I don't even need to talk about the offensive line because you guys know since the beginning of the season, they've been a middling offensive line and maybe even a little higher than that all season long. Thank you, Coach Priscillo. Thank you, Coach Ferenz, for putting together an offensive line that actually allowed Jaxson Dart the opportunity to play above the usual rookie curve. And, of course, Wan'Dale Robinson with a career year, 12th receiver in Giants history to put up 1,000 yards in a season, 13th player overall. And I know you folks know who that other guy is. The non-receiver who had 1,000 yards. Yeah, you're right. Tight end Mark Bavaro. When Phil Simms would constantly hit him with that seam pass or that short slant or post over the middle. Yeah, it's been something to watch. Giants running game. They're up over 4 yards a carry again. Offensive line's been a little more inconsistent in the run blocking, but nonetheless, doing real well. All right, so we're about a half hour into the program. Time to get to your chats. John Professario, 7055. He comes from the other side of the fence who's worried about draft picks. He's put up a whole bunch of chats here on the side of the screen. No sense in wasting time reading those. John, I know where you're at. I agree to disagree with you. And that's it. Live and let live. Hope you enjoy the rest of the program. Jared Brown, 3289, says, Happy New Year, Paul, and a Happy New Year to you and all of our viewers and listeners. Isaac Moore, 1248, says, we're here. Hey, Paul, had chat. Happy New Year, everybody. Harlem X, same thing. Hi, Paul. Hey, everybody. Hope everybody's enjoying the holidays. There's James O'Keefe, one of our other regulars, says, good evening, Paul. I can never root for my team to lose. I can never, ever do that. I get it, James. I get it. You know, it's funny. I just referred to this conversation, I think, the other day on Big Blue Kickoff Live. I was talking with Wan'Dale Robinson. I guess it was on Thursday afternoon. And he was telling me how he could never understand anybody, any fan, any real fan who would want their team to lose and pay more attention to a draft pick. And his rationale was that person has never been in a locker room and has never been at practice and never gone through practice, never been in a trainer's room, and doesn't understand how hard these players and coaches work and what they go through physically, mentally, and emotionally during the course of the season. Wandale said to me, look around this locker room. You know, any given year, you could have as much of a third of the team turn over. And he said, you know, there's a bunch of guys here who don't know what team they're going to play for next season, and a bunch of guys here who, if they don't put good stuff on tape, even in the final week or two, because at that point they had 2 games left, they're not sure if they'll get an invite to a training camp or they'll even make a team next year and may not even be in the NFL. So how do you look one of those guys in the face and tell them that it's not important to play well and win the game? So he laughed and chuckled. He doesn't understand the other side of that fence. I'll simply say live and let live. But I've never spoken to a player who could see the other side of that fence. But that's why fans are fans and players are players, because they each have a different frame of reference and a different angle as to how they look at things. But James, you'll be glad to know the Giants players and coaches feel exactly as you do. You're on board with them and they're on board with you. They went out there to beat the Raiders and they soundly beat them. I know, very weak team, injured, bunch of guys not playing. I get it. But that doesn't matter to the guys who prepared in East Rutherford, because they wanted to go out and play 4 quarters of sound quality football, and all 3 units participated in the victory. We saw that. Offense, defense, and special teams. That was a quality win. Not as great necessarily as belting the Eagles at MetLife Stadium earlier this year, or even knocking off the Chargers at MetLife Stadium earlier this year. But it was significant in that it was the Giants' first road victory since the first month of last season, when Isaiah Simmons blocked a field goal against the Seattle Seahawks. So yeah, it meant an awful lot to those coaches and players who have been here for the last couple of years. Jared Brown, 3289, says, I feel it's more about player development than anything. Okay. Isaac Moore says, players were happy to win, and I'm happy for them. There you go. James O'Keefe says, 100%, Paul. It's who you pick, not where or how many. All you got to do is look at the track record of the National Football League. And you pick too many guys who don't make it, you wind up in the quicksand. It's just that simple. All right, let's see. Who else do we have here? Aiden Fink. Just saw you were live. Figured you weren't doing a show on New Year's Eve. Happy New Year, Paul, and everyone watching. Well, you too, Aiden. I thought we told you on last week's show that we would try to be back here on Tuesday night. I'm sorry if I didn't make that advance announcement. We tried to get the word out on Twitter. We did, and hopefully enough of people were able to catch it. I don't know that for a fact, but hopefully enough of people were. In any event. All right, so let's see what else we have here. Aiden Fink says, let's hope the Ravens lose on Sunday night and they fire Harbaugh, as we need the next Vrabel out there. Aiden also says, Paul knows the game way too much for someone who never played. I give him a ton of props for his football knowledge. You're very kind, Aiden. You know, like I say, 43 years I'm doing this. I've had players who asked me if I played, but no, I never did. I just spent an awful lot of time of studying this game and getting to know every facet of the game. Not just the X's and the O's, but knowing the players, knowing concepts, knowing general managers, how they think, knowing scouts, knowing personnel directors. I say this all the time, and Aid, maybe you'll appreciate this because it's the easiest way I can say it. Too many people just look at stats, right? And that's because it's driven by fantasy football and by gambling. That's what happens. When you're a fantasy football nut or a gambling nut, you're simply driven by stats and numbers. You don't pay attention as much to the tape. You don't pay attention as much to psychology, to schemes, to different emotional factors that can actually play part in a game. What I learned is that pro football is basically a prism. And there are many, 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 many different sides and angles to that prism. And you've heard me say this on the program before, Aiden, as well as Big Blue Kickoff Live. Very rarely can you look at one particular issue and make a concrete statement or have a concrete opinion if you think that issue is isolated in a box, because that's not the way the National Football League works. There are webs of strands of the spider web attached to every single issue, and every strand affects another strand. And as I say all the time, the game's a spider web because of those strands. You got to peel back all the layers of the onion, not just the surface, when you say that's a problem or that's wrong. Get rid of that guy. Get rid of that guy. Do this, do that. You can't do it correctly by just looking at the outer layer of the onion or one strand of the spider web and clip that out and think it's not going to impact other strands. Or in the case of the prism, you can look at different sides of the prism and see different things by looking at every single one of those angles. You have to be smart enough and astute enough to understand all of the other angles, all of the other strands, all of the other layers of the onion. And it's impossible for anyone who is not actually in the front office or on the coaching staff to truly know all of them. But very few people even recognize that those angles exist. They're naive. They don't know and they don't understand. And that's why they make naive and shallow points, naive and shallow arguments. Part of what I've always tried to do for you, the listener, and for you, the viewer, is to identify many of these other angles for you, because I know that they exist, and I know a lot of the angles and a lot of the viewpoints that come from those other areas. I don't have them all. I can't have them all. I'm not part of the front office or the personnel department or the coaching staff or the scouting staff. But I know a hell of a lot more of those different angles and different strands than most people. And that's what I try to bring to you guys. I try to give you as full an onion, as full a spider web, and as full of a prism as I can, so that you have the opportunity to gain the knowledge and to rationally try to use some logic to say, all right, there's a lot more evidence here than I thought, and maybe some of these other ideas are really rational and they should come into play, as opposed to a knee-jerk reaction that simply says, so-and-so stinks, he needs to be cut. That's what it's all about, Aiden. That's why I do what I do. I've done it for 43 years. I would love to do it for another 43 more. I really would. I don't ever want to retire. And it's the pursuit of understanding all of those things. And I know I can never understand all of them because, again, you know, you got to be embedded upstairs at the Giants facility, which you can't be a conduit like I am and be embedded. But I try to bring you as many of those things as I possibly can so that you folks can hopefully get more enjoyment out of being a fan, and you can hopefully make more rational decisions as opposed to the one-track mind that just spews hate and always wants to blow whatever it is up every minute of every day. I don't know why anybody would want to be that way. It makes no sense to be totally miserable all the time. Anyway, Armand Duda, love to see Carter's progress the last 3 games. Absolutely. Armand Duda says, give me Dak taking 8 sacks between Burns and Carter. Oh, my. You think so, huh? You think so? 8 sacks? No, I think that's you got to take the under on that one, right? For those of you who listen to our Giants radio pregame show and we do over-unders. Armand Duda comes back and says, excited to see Dart take on the Cowboys defense. Yeah, it would be great. It would be great. Because if he could do what we think he can do, it's another notch on his belt. Absolutely. That's what I tried to explain at the top of the program. Armand Duda says, amazing what Charlie Bullen has managed to do for the defense in such a short time. Eve says, Dexter has even seemed to be playing better, saying that Charlie has made the defense more complex. Actually, Armand, I've talked to the players about this, and obviously I've been watching carefully. He hasn't actually done that. He's made the defense more simplified. The calls are easier to understand. The players' responsibilities are easier to understand. But what he has done, okay, what you've seen with the fronts, specifically the Giants' pass rush package, is he's moved guys into different places. He's asked them to stunt some more. He's asked them to start in different spots. And that has been a dramatic difference. The Giants' front is not nearly as predictable as it was during the first 2/3 or so of the season. That is a huge difference in what we have seen over the last month. Harlem X says, this small amount of time for this DC does nothing for me. I need about 6 or 7 more games of consistent progress for me to say he's doing a good job. It's really, really hard to hide effort from players regardless of coaching. Harlem X, I understand your point, and that's why I think earlier in this program you heard me say, I wish that there were more games. I really do. To some people, they might be thinking, the season is gone. They're 3-13. Enough is enough. Let's get it over with and move on. I know. I get it. It's been painful. It's been frustrating. It's been agonizing. I understand why people would want the season to be over. I do. But for a football junkie like myself, who really digs into this stuff, I'm telling you, man, I wish they had another month of games because I want to see more development. I want to see if some of these flashes from some of these guys is real. I want to see more progress. We're going to be denied that opportunity because Sunday's the last game. End of story, period. There will be no more snaps for Jaxson Dart, for Abdul Carter, for Marcus Bowe, for Darius Alexander. That's it. Those snaps are over. That hurts. That's what stinks, honestly, for me, is that we will not have the opportunity to continue watching these guys who have shown stuff as young players. I think Tyler Nubin, okay, who's had a very sporadic season, has shown more positive signs since the DC changed. And I want to see Tyler Nubin be the Tyler Nubin that he was as a rookie. And now he's IR. And there are no more snaps for Tyler Nubin. And we don't get to see that. So we still have a question about which Tyler Nubin is he? The guy who looked really good as a rookie, or the guy who was unbelievably inconsistent in year 2? So we go into 2026 and we hope that he's the guy from 2024. There's really nothing else to say about that. How about John Michael Schmitz? I've got him down for only allowing 2.5 sacks this year, according to my tape study. I think it's been the best season of his young career. He's been okay. You can't have at least an average or above average offensive line without a center who's playing that well. Now, is this the ceiling for John Michael Schmitz? Or after we saw this big jump in year 3, is there another jump in year 4? I don't know the answer to that. That is another question mark. Is this his ceiling, or is there more? Or does he go backwards? You see what I'm getting at, people? This is why I thirst for more games. And I'll be honest, I can't wait. I can't wait to get to training camp next year and have the binoculars out and the microscope out on all of these guys that we just talked about. Because I do feel there's optimism there. I do feel there's better play to come. Paulson Adebo and Javon Holland, 2 highly paid free agents, came to the Giants this year and did not play to the level that they did with their previous teams. Adebo did not play as well as he did when he was in New Orleans, not nearly as well. Holland did not play as well as he did with the Miami Dolphins. Both guys did have their bumps and bruises and were nicked up at various times during the season. I understand that. But whatever the reason, and again, you've heard me on other shows talk about there could be multiple reasons why a player doesn't perform up to expectation. For whatever those reasons, for those 2 players, I want to see them play to the back of their football cards in 2026. They didn't do it in 2025. But we know from their history with their previous NFL teams, they are better players than they showed this year. And I expect to see that. I hope to see that. But do I know for sure? No, I don't. I expect to see a lot more out of Chauncey Golston. Career year with Dallas in 2024. Comes to the Giants, misses a whole chunk of games because of injuries. But Chauncey Golston, if you watched any of his tape with the Cowboys last season, he was a really good player. I want to see that player playing for the New York Giants. And I've got to wait now. I've got to wait until September of 2026 to see that. It is what it is. Armand Duda says, first time we haven't had Andrew Thomas and the O-line didn't collapse. Marcus Bowe. He's shown a lot. And by the way, Jermaine Eluemunor, solid right tackle. I know, 9 false start penalties going into this past weekend, and I'm not sure now. Let me double check this. I'm going to look this up because I don't want to give you guys a wrong quote, okay? I don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look this up while we're doing the show. Let's see here. Yeah, exactly what I thought. Going into this past weekend, Jermaine Eluemunor was tied for the NFL lead for the most false start penalties with 7. He had a couple more in the first quarter on the Giants' first drive in Las Vegas. Okay? So, unfortunately, that puts him right up at the top. Wilkinson from Atlanta also had 9 full start penalties this year. And as far as overall, Jermaine Eluemunor was flagged 13 times for various penalties over the course of the season, and that did tie for the most flags against any one individual player this year. Again, 9 of those 13 flags were for false starts. Now, part of that is because he did have 3 different quarterbacks to work with, and the cadence is different. It does tend to cause issues. He had Wilson, he had Winston, he had Dart. But that's the one thing, and if you saw the Twitter post by Eluemunor, I guess it was earlier today or yesterday, he was proud of this season because he finally played more than 1,000 snaps in a year, which he had not done during his career before. So he was proud of that and did say he knows he's got to clean up on some of the flags. But he was a good, steady, solid player for this team this season. Now, he's in a contract year. So how much money do you going to pay him to keep him? Because here's the question. Have you guys seen enough of Marcus Bowe to say he can be your starting right tackle in 2026? Because you can't open up the checkbook for Jermaine Eluemunor. See, you can only stretch your dollars so far to try to keep Eluemunor if he gets offers from other teams, and I'm sure he will. You got to figure out how far do you want to stretch. He wants to stay. He's a New Jersey native. He loves it here. He's great for the community. He told me personally he has never felt the respect and the love of any fan base like what he has felt from the New York Giants fans this season. So he wants to be here in the worst way. But he's in a position where he could get a nice piece of change. And I don't know how high the Giants can bid to retain his services. They've got some salary cap room going into next year. It's not huge. It's also not terrible. But what do? You got a few very important free agents to deal with. Wan'Dale Robinson. I would think you've got to stretch a little bit to keep him. Cordell Flott had a career year. Played really good corner this season. How much do you stretch to keep him? Both of those guys want to be here. They've made that clear. I've heard them say it. But what kind of juicy offers are they going to get dangled in front of them to leave? Don't know. And those are just a couple of the guys to mention. There are some other guys too who are in the final years of their deals. So tough decisions that have to be made, and tough economic decisions that will also be very much a part of all of this. Let's see here. What else do we have? Armand Duda, we have picked high in the draft most of the time the last decade, yet some people still think that will magically turn things around enough to want us to lose. Aiden Fink, Doug Peterson, take notes, he says. Yeah, Doug Peterson, who was coaching the Philadelphia Eagles the night that they threw or potentially did not play their best in the second half of a game to win, as the Giants were, and Joe Judge in his first season were knocked out of the playoffs, or at least last game of the season, were knocked out of qualifying for the playoffs. Remember, the Giants beat the Cowboys at MetLife Stadium. And then they had to sit back and watch the Eagles decide to make some significant benchings in the second half of the game as they lost. And the Giants were then forced to stay home. Yeah, people around the league don't forget about those things. Rich Big Blue says, good evening, Paul. Arrived late. Thanks for all you've provided us to the fans this season. I wish you all the best for 2026. Thanks and God bless. And back at you, Rich. Look, I just want to say right here, okay? I just want to say right here, for every one of you who have been part of this program, this is the second year we've done it, okay? I'm very appreciative because, again, I've said this before. Sports Illustrated, Patricia Traynor, she asked me to entertain this thought about doing this show. And I'm like, I do Big Blue Kickoff Live all the time. I do all the game day coverage. I don't know. Do I really need to do this other stuff? I mean, people can find a way to get me. She's like, well, we'd really like you to, we think you'd be an asset. We'd like to try. And we think the fans would appreciate it. And I think what we've seen is that most of you fans do appreciate it. You know, there's certainly been some really nice responses to the program, and many of you who have been loyal to the program, which is even better. All right, let's see here. NYC TV NYC. What are you talking about, Paul? Do you want more chips for Vegas or less chips? I was just in Las Vegas. I don't gamble, so I want nothing to do with chips. Unless they're potato. How about that? Armand says, the locker room needed that win. Great to see them happy after a game again. Okay. Greg Turd Hauler says, salute, Uncle Paulie. Back at you. Okay. Oh, and Greg also says, Giants Nation loves you, Paul, even though we can't stand your optimism sometimes when it comes to this show, blankish show of a franchise. Greg, I understand that. I do. Here's what I will say, and I mentioned this on Big Blue Kickoff Live yesterday because somebody called up and said he was actually somebody who understands the reality of how poorly things have gone for the last decade. But then he said, you know what? Why do I want to listen to talk shows and read newspaper clippings every day that just bash and smash the team? He's like, don't you think I feel bad enough as a fan when the team loses without having to read and listen to bashing over and over and over again? Isn't that redundant? How is that going to make me feel better? All it does is make me feel worse. And his thought was, that's why I come to Big Blue Kickoff Live, because you guys don't live to bash 24/7, and you actually try to give us real analysis. You give us real facts, okay, which is what I've always done. I rely on facts, and I try to give you all of the angles, or as many of the angles of the prism as I can. I also subscribe to the theory, which my parents taught me many, many years ago when I was a little tyke. Don't spend too much time crying over spilled milk, okay? Because that doesn't do you any good. You should spend more time and more energy about trying to understand why the milk spilled and if you can avoid spilling it the next time and how you can make the situation better. And try to understand the big picture. And to always remember, there's always somebody who has it worse than you. Well, those philosophies I've carried with me my entire life. So for those of you who think that I'm so optimistic all the time and that, you know, it's a little too sweet for you, I get it. But if you have a positive outlook on life, which means you tend to look at the glass half full, which, by the way, acknowledges that the glass is half empty. If I say it's half full, that means I recognize that it's half empty. I just choose to put more emphasis on the part that's full. It doesn't mean I'm ignoring the half-empty glass. I just choose not to dwell on it because all it does is enhance misery. So, in any event, that's how I live my life. And I feel that way about everything. So, I want to make something clear to you folks. And it doesn't matter if I'm on this show, if I'm on the game day broadcasts, or if I'm on Big Blue Kickoff Live. I'm giving you guys as much information as I can give you so that you can decide what you want to think, what you want to opine. But I'll also give you my analysis and opinion and what I think. And yes, because of the positivity that I was brought up with, I'm always going to give you a more of that side of the glass. That's just the way it is. Because to continuously kick and beat a dead horse every 5 minutes, every single day of the week, is pointless and will do nothing, in my opinion, but make you more miserable. Who wants that? My goodness. Anyway, I hope that explains to you guys who maybe sometimes just like, oh my God, it's blue-colored glasses. He doesn't see that they're 3-13. Look, folks, I watched games at Yale Bowl. I know what real skunks are. I watched Craig Morton play quarterback for this team. Joe Pizarczyk played quarterback for this team. Jerry Golston. And if you want to go back to ask some of your older folks that you may know. Ask them what it was like when they saw Earl Morrow play. I mean, Gary Wood. I've seen really, really, really bad Giants teams that did not have even a glass half full. The glass had droplets in it. That's how bad those teams were. And I'm not referring to the one-loss record. I'm referring to the actual roster and quality of play. There was no glass half full for a bunch of those teams. There were droplets. Literally droplets, raindrops in those glasses. At least this glass is half full. All right. Armand Duda said what fantasy and gambling has done to the fans. A lot of people don't even watch the game, just highlights. The NFL growth has come at a cost. Armand, I agree with your perspective. There are those people who just want to follow games on the internet. There are those people who just want to follow games on NFL Red Zone. They're interested in their gambling. They're interested in their fantasy. And they're not necessarily interested in their football team. I get it. I understand it. I can't enjoy the league that way. I'll give you a good example, right? Let me call up one of my homemade charts that I do from my tape study. And hopefully this will give you guys a little bit of a better understanding as to what I'm talking about when I say you have to peel back the layers of the onion. The Giants have allowed 44 sacks this season, okay? Now, I believe it's somewhere in the top 6 or 7 most of the league. So you could say, well, how can you tell me that the offensive line is average to above average if they've allowed that many sacks? How could you say that? Well, here's why, folks. Jaxson Dart has been sacked 31 of those 44 times, okay? The other quarterbacks accounted for the other 13. But here's what you have to do. When you pull back the layers of the onion and you study the tape and you talk to the players and the coaches and you understand the concepts and you understand the plays and you know how they develop and what went wrong, you can start taking educated guesses as to how to assign different attributes to different players and different plays. Now, I do not put a grading system together like some of those analytic services because I know enough not to do that. You can't possibly, unless you knew all the idiosyncrasies and intricacies of every play, you can't possibly put a grade together on a player. They are totally facetious, false, garbage, worthless. Listen to J.J. Watt. He has gone public on network television time and time again, and he will tell you that those grades are about as worthless as used toilet paper. Now, having said that, what I can do is isolate individual plays, again, because I do follow up and talk to coaches and players and ask them about the plays, because I have an understanding after all these years of what's going on. So Jaxson Dart has been sacked 31 times this season. 15 of the 31 were because of him. I've charged Jaxson Dart with 15 of the Giants' 44 sacks. Or if you want to just break it down to the 31 sacks that he has been taken down, he was the point or the issue that caused 15 of those sacks. How do I know? Because I've cataloged each and every sack, the fronts that the team played against them on the play, who got the sack, specifically what physically happened on the play. Was it a zone blitz? What down was it? I have all that stuff cataloged for every single one of them because that's what I do. That's why I dig into this stuff. I peel back the layers of the onion for you folks. So I'm just going to give you the rationale behind his 15 sacks. All right, here's the first one. Stepped up into the sack. He had time to throw it, held the ball, stepped up into it. He got charged. Another one, he tripped and fell. It went down as a sack. Next one, ran into the pressure and then dropped the ball. Recovered it, got charged with a sack. Another one, stepped up into it. Another one, held the ball too long, tried to run around the edge, was caught for a loss. He gets charged with the sack. Next one, held ball, rolled off into the pressure. Another one, ran into the pressure. Another one, held ball. Another one, tracked down from behind, held the ball too long, could have thrown it away, charged for the sack. That's the kind, I'm not going to read all 15 for you, but that's the kind of stuff, okay, that real football people digest. Okay, folks? I hope that gives you a little bit more of an idea what I'm talking about. Get to that second, third, fourth layer of the onion. Don't just look at the outer layer of the onion. Go deeper. Learn the game. Spend the time. Go to people. Go to coaches. Ask your high school football coach locally if he can explain some things about plays and schemes to you. If it really matters to you. I have coaches and scouts that I talk to all the time to help me out with stuff that maybe I didn't understand, or I'm like, I think this is what it was. Did you see this the same way? There's no fun in just sticking to the outer layer of the onion and taking a wild guess and taking a pot shot at somebody. That's not fun. It's also irresponsible. All right. Anyway. James O'Keefe says, Paul, what percentage do you give the Giants on re-signing Eluemunor? James, it all depends on how much money somebody throws at him. I don't know that the Giants have to outbid everybody to keep him, but I think they're going to have to come pretty close. He wants to be here. He really does. But I don't know. Is there a team out there that's going to blow away the Giants' offer? He's not, he didn't make the Pro Bowl, so he's not a Pro Bowl player, but he's really good. And he's still young enough where he should have several more years to go. I mean, I would think he's going to be looking at a 3, 4, 5 year, probably 4-year contract. All right. Harlem X says to Armand Duda, when all you worry about is money, 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 quality is no longer a thing. The NFL is hurting itself long term. Harlem X, you know how I feel about that. I think you've been watching me long enough. I am disappointed with the overall quality of play in the National Football League. And I think a lot of it does have to do with money, as you say. It also has to do with free agency and the salary cap. It absolutely is like acid in the face of continuity and longevity and the ability to teach and build long-time winners. Let's see, what do we have here? Armand Duda says, we're very lucky to have you, Paul. You remind fans what the game is really about. Well, I appreciate that, Armand. I'm old school. I love the game for the game. I don't need to play fantasy football to enjoy the game. I don't need to gamble to enjoy the game. That's why I don't do either of those things. I love the game for what it is. Heck, I covered the USFL's New Jersey Generals for 3 straight years. Went to practice once a week, every week. Covered every single one of their home games. 83, 84, and 85. Got to watch Herschel Walker up close and personal. Boy, that was fun. He was something else, man. He should be in the Hall of Fame, by the way. And I'm grossly offended that the Pro Football Hall of Fame, not the NFL Hall of Fame, the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio, does not recognize Herschel Walker as a Hall of Famer. I know the USFL was a AAA league. I don't dispute that at all. Ton of those players made it to the National Football League, and dozens of them have become Hall of Famers, including, by the way, Reggie White. Yeah, the greatest pass rusher of all time. Yeah. But anyway, I digress. The point is, it's the Pro Football Hall of Fame. The USFL was a pro league, a legitimate pro league. It wasn't the WFL of the mid-'70s, which was garbage. It's not the XFL that was half wrestling, that was garbage. It's not the new USFL, UFL, XFL hybrid, which is not very good. No. The USFL was a real AAA league, and Herschel Walker was unbelievable. Not that his NFL career is anything to sneeze at, because even on his NFL merits, Herschel Walker deserves serious Hall of Fame consideration. But when you tack on his years with the Generals, there's no way they should keep him out. Anyway, Isaac Moore says, Cowboys cut Trayvon Diggs. That is correct. He plans on signing with a playoff team so that he can play in the postseason over the course of the next few weeks. We're already almost 75 minutes in. Maybe I'll take it to 9:30. Depends on how many calls or chats we get here now. Greg says, Greg Turd Hauler says, yeah, Paul, enough is enough. End the season already. I understand. He says, see more injuries and bad football. I get that. I totally get that. Believe me. I'm not going to disagree with you. I think you're certainly entitled to have that opinion because the injuries, the losses, those are real. You want those to end. You don't want to continue to watch Sunday and then be upset on Sunday night, maybe be cranky on Monday morning. I get that. That's okay. That's okay. Because that's your angle of the prism. That's what you get out of Sunday's games. And you prefer not to have that anymore. Fine, that's okay. What do I get? I watch practice every day. I talk to the players and the coaches. Then I cover the games. And I do what I love to do more than anything else on this earth, and that is cover the National Football League. and talk about the New York Football Giants. And that's why, when I'm on Big Blue Kickoff Live 12 months out of the year, and, we tried to do this show I think we took a small summer hiatus last year, and we'll do it again this season. But that's one of the reasons why, is because this is what I'm all about. You get 150% out of me every day in this job because I can't give less than that. That's why I want it to continue. And that's why I will never retire. Sean Jackson, 3203. Good evening, Paul, and I hope you enjoy your holiday. Back at you. Does the Giants' energy within the building feel more like fresh and full of life and hope again since the victory over the Raiders? It was relief. It was a bit of opening the window and letting some fresh air in because guys were rewarded for their hard work. See, Sean, what I talked about earlier when I was talking with Wandale Robinson, the amount of hours, blood, sweat, and tears that coaches, scouts, and players put in during the week, it's a lot. And remember, they also have personal lives and family issues to deal with. They also have, let's not kid ourselves, every NFL player who has gone through the crashes that they've gone through all season long, they hurt. They hurt. These guys are not walking around the locker room or around the practice facility feeling as good as you or I might, because we just have regular jobs that doesn't involve colliding left and right every single weekend. They go through an awful lot during the course of an NFL season. So any weekend that they can be rewarded with a victory for the fruits of their labor, that's a good weekend for them. It really means something to them. I mean, how would any of you out there like to be in your job, okay, work very, very long hours, have to constantly grind, told every single day, you have to do better, you have to do better, you have to do better. And then at the end of every week, you get an evaluation from the boss who says, we didn't do good enough. We lost. How are you going to feel? And how about when that happens several weeks in a row? Like this year, the Giants lost 9 straight games in a row. How are you going to feel? But to continue to grind, and then be told at the end of the weekend, hey, guess what? It was worth it. We won this weekend. The company did good. We cleared a profit. How about that, everybody? Don't you think you'd feel better? Just try to think about that for a minute. Rob says, do you like Charlie Bullen? Excellent job, in my opinion. Rob, again, I think the problem is it's a small sample size. I do like what I've seen. There have been some good signs. It's only a month. I wish there was more to digest. But yes, there are certainly some pluses there. All right, Armand Duda. Will never good to have I think he means it will be good to have Scalaboo and Neighbors back next season. Hopefully Dart and Carter continue to grow under the new coach. Greg Turd-Haller says, Adebo did not play at all last year. He was on. Yeah, he had the broken leg. I'm aware of that. But if you look at Paulson Adebo's track record, press corner, who could also play zone, who always had a nose for the football. Very smart, good teammate, good effort player. His track record with the Saints. You know what? Yeah, you're gonna make me give you the number now, and that's fine. I don't mind. But here's Adebo's number that's very important to understand when you talk about him. Okay? Paulson Adebo with the New Orleans Saints had 10 interceptions in 52 games. That's a nice number. Okay? It's a nice number. And that includes a 2022 season when he didn't have any. But he had 3 in 2021, 4 in 2023, and 3 in 2024, despite only playing in 7 games. Because then he broke his leg. So I understood your point. No, he did not miss the whole year in 2024, but he missed half the year with the broken leg. But this is a guy who was around the ball. He made plays. And what happened? Not a great year for him by any stretch of the imagination. And that's a fact. In fact, I'm looking at his advanced numbers from Sports Radar. Again, this is a stat. This is not somebody's grade. It's a stat. The data says he allowed 50 completions on 75 targets at him this season, which was a high, career high, 67%. So no, he did not play as well as he did in 3.5 seasons with the New Orleans Saints. That's just a fact. And it's disappointing because he's a better player than that. We know he is. In 2023, he had 18 passes defended. 18 in 15 games. He's a really good player, folks. And he didn't show it for the Giants this year. Again, there can be a variety of reasons. All right, we're going to take it to 9:30. We'll take it down to the bottom of the hour. Aiden Fink says, you have to give Wan'Dale a big contract or he's going to reach his full potential with another team. Aiden, I think you got to try to stretch to keep him. I agree with you. Him and Jaxson Dart have such a symmetric relationship. They fit each other like a glove. I think it would be horrible for Wan'Dale Robinson to be somewhere else next season. Isaac Moore, 1248, says, Wan'Dale won't be the same when Neighbors comes back. No question. I'm not saying that his numbers will be the same. Look, he's the first, the second player in Giants history, okay, to have 2 90-catch seasons. The other one is Odell Beckham Jr. He's a huge part of this offense. And even with Neighbors back, he would continue to be. Now, he's not going, in all likelihood, catch 90 passes for over 1,000 yards. No, he's not. But he would be a very, very sweet piece to have in conjunction with him. Now, with Jaxson Dart and the offensive line giving the quarterback enough protection to find his receivers, man, oh man, yeah, I'd hate to lose him. I really would. Greg Turd-Hauler says, yeah, from September to January, they earn the right to play more games, and the Giants haven't done that. You're correct. So why do we need to see more bad football just for the sake of seeing bad football? Well, I told you why I want to see more football. Because of the growth and development of the young players. But that's my side of the prism. Okay? That's a very small sliver. Because I'm a football junkie who loves the game and who really, really enjoys watching players get better and reach their potential. But that's me. That's my sliver. It doesn't have to be yours, Greg. It doesn't. I get it. You feel miserable on Sunday night when they lose. You feel miserable Monday morning when they lose. You don't want to see anymore. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. Isaac Moore says, I don't think they will pay him more than Slayton, that's for sure. Greg Turd-Hauler says, no, haven't seen enough of Bo. Well, Greg, I hate to go back to your previous comment, but if you had more games to watch and Bo had more snaps, maybe you would have seen enough of him. But, of course, we'll never know now because Sunday is the finale. Greg also says, I'm always hesitant about re-signing guys who only perform on contract years. Well, one thing for sure, all right, in talking about Eluemunor, even though he had his best season this year, it was not bad last year either. This was not a total aberration. And quite honestly, Wan'Dale Robinson the same. Now, I know his yards per catch was under 10 last year, and that's embarrassing. But to do what he's done now this year, following up with back-to-back 90-catch seasons, that means something. That's not just a contract thing. So be careful. That's on an individual basis. You have to look at each individual case and determine, was that guy a contract year guy, or did he really show some level of step-up improvement over the years, and was the contract year just the top step to this point? And is there another step to go? Look at Brian Burns. Brian Burns was a 2-time Pro Bowl player with the Carolina Panthers. But he redoes his deal to get an extension and a raise with the Giants in order to agree to the trade. And the Giants bring him over from Carolina. He's getting a boatload of money. And what does he go out and do? Has a terrific year last season, and then this season does even better. He's a pro's pro. Great example for everyone in the NFL is to watch Brian Burns. He's been dominant all the way through this season. Armand Duda says, Eluemunor gave us more positives than his penalties gave us negatives. I agree. Would love to have him back. Hopefully we can afford him. Armand says, I like what I've seen from Bo, but if we can't, I'd rather keep Eluemunor. Would love to be able to keep Wan'Dale too. I understand. I understand. Sean Jaxson, 3203. Paul, I can't help but feel frustrated and a bit jealous as Giants fan when I watch how the Bears, Pats, and Texans turned around their seasons, etc. I'm tired of New York Giants being nowhere close to the playoffs. Sean, Dart will be in his second year next season. Williams in his second year with the Bears. May in his second year with the Pats. Stroud in his second year with the Texans. Just saying. What do they all have in common? Okay? What do they all have in common? Actually, no. Let me take that back. Stroud won 10 games with the Texans last year. And, this is his third year. So he doesn't fit in with May and with Williams because they're in their second year this year. Stroud was in his second year last year. But you get the point. All three of those guys did what they had to do in their second seasons. They stepped it up another notch, and they helped their team get to the playoffs. Sit tight, Sean. You're going to enjoy 2026, I'm pretty sure. All right, let's see if there's anybody else here. Armand Duda says, BBKL and this show are invaluable. Shows that bash the team and focus on the negative are a dime a dozen. Well, again, if you just look at the top layer of the onion, it's easy to kick a dead horse in the stomach. It's a lazy way out. Work hard, study hard, gain a wealth of knowledge, and you can dig deeper into the fourth layer of the onion. Greg Turd-Holer, we just need to vent, Paulie. And when our concerns fall on deaf ears in the media, then it can get frustrating is all. That's why I say every opinion is fine as long as it's based on fact. And I'll give you a great example. There are some people who go out, oh, John Michael Schmidt stinks. He's a total bust. He's terrible. No, that's not a fact. Fact is, he played good football in his third season. His first two seasons were marred by inconsistent play and injuries. But in season 3, he started to show that he's a legitimate quality NFL starter. That's a fact. So like when people bash him, well, they're bashing him for the first 2 years and ignoring what he did in 2025. Greg, that's my point. Too many people who want to talk negatively, they just look at the glass half empty and they don't acknowledge the other part of the glass that's got the liquid in it. That's the problem. Greg says he thinks this is worse than the Yale Bowl era. I couldn't agree with you more. I lived the Yale Bowl era and I was there. I don't know if you were. If you thought that that was better, I don't know that I understand why you feel that way. I really don't. But if you want to feel that way, you can. Absolutely, you can if you want to. I simply know that the Yale Bowl era was difficult to digest because you did not have glasses half full in those days. Like I said, they were raindrops in those glasses. That was rough. Greg says, at least we had Ron Johnson and Brad Van Pelt. Well, Van Pelt, if you remember, originally started out on the taxi squad. He wasn't even originally a Giants starting linebacker. When he got to the team, he was a converted safety out of Michigan State, and he was on the taxi squad at first. Ron Johnson had 1,000-yard seasons in 70 and 72. The Giants went to the Yale Bowl in 73. They played 2 games, their first 2 home games, against Houston and Philadelphia in 1973. Then Yankee Stadium underwent construction. So they wound up going to the Yale Bowl for the remainder, their remaining 5 games, regular season games that season, and in 1974. Now, Greg, again, I don't know if you lived it. I lived it, and I can tell you, without looking it up, Ron Johnson had serious injuries and missed a lot of games in 73 and in 74 and was not nearly the Pro Bowl caliber player that he was in 1970 and 1972. So I hate to kind of spoil that for you, but you got your years a little bit mixed up there. And it wasn't really until, the Giants got to, 2 years in Yale Bowl were terrible. Shea Stadium in 75 was dreadful, okay? Joe Dawkins was the leading running back on that team, and he didn't even have 600 yards rushing. So please don't try to tell me, that the Shea Stadium 1975 season was glass half full compared to this. Again, you can have your opinion if you like it. I get it. You can have it. I certainly can't see it that way. But you're entitled to have it, and I won't try to convince you otherwise. I'm simply giving you the rationale that I have for how I feel. Rocky 7304, can the Giants sign for Eluemunor and Robinson? I certainly hope so. Greg Turd Haller says Yale Bowl era is now superseded by current Giant era poll. Sorry you haven't realized it yet. At least in the Yale Bowl era, days before wildcard playoff teams, we didn't finish close to the Cowboys. Greg, don't try to convince me otherwise. I know what I know. And again, as with this draft pick situation, I won't try to convince you. You don't try to convince me. We can agree to disagree. Feel all you want. If you want to look at glory in the Yale Bowl era and you think that those teams were good and those players were good and that these teams aren't, you are certainly welcome to think that. I don't see those facts, but you are certainly welcome to have a different opinion if you prefer. Melvin 7804 says Big Blue, and this is how we're going to finally wrap things up. Armand Duda says, thank you for the show, Paul. Appreciate it very much. Happy New Year. Let's end the season with a Cowboys loss and a Giants win. Go Big Blue. C-Mac, the cable guy, we can test this new improved defense against a real offense and find out if there is real progress. C-Mac, that's a great point. That's a great point because we know Prescott's playing quarterback, and he's never lost a game that he played against the Giants, and he's got weapons. And Jerry Jones is not going to want to lose this game. So, yes, there could be some really nice positives there could be really nice positives coming out of this game should the Giants beat them. Greg says context matters. With a large percentage of the population, they can care less about anything non-surface level information, Greg, you're right, and it's a shame. People should want to be educated. People should want to know as much as they can so they can make realistic and logical, informed opinions. They should want information. They should not settle for the outer layer of the onion. But you're right. Most people do. That's why we have social media. Aiden Fink says Wan'Dale Robinson's numbers are slightly better, but basically identical to Stephon Diggs this season. Greg says, Greg Turd Haller says Herschel Walker is not a Hall of Famer. You're right. He is not a Hall of Famer. He's not in the Hall of Fame. However, if I had a vote, he would absolutely get my vote. Obviously, if you had a vote, you would not vote for him. And that's okay. Let's see. James O'Keefe, Happy New Year, Paul. Hope 2026 is a better year for the Giants. Harlem X says coaching matters, and it certainly does. We need the right coach, someone who isn't going to tolerate making business decisions or taking plays off. We need a veteran coach, not the new hotness. Totally understand that. Totally understand that. Greg says, yes, pay Wan'Dale. See, we agree on some things here, Greg. It's great that we have some different opinions, and it's great that we have some that are the same. That'll do it for this edition of the Big Blue Breakdown Live, folks. We actually went a little bit over 90 minutes tonight, and we had a very nice live audience. We appreciate your time very much. Thank you. Have a healthy, safe, and very happy New Year. We will be back again with a tape version of our show. It's only 20 minutes, and we will give you the 3 key matchups to the Giants game against the Dallas Cowboys. That'll come your way on the New York Giants on SI YouTube channel and media network on Friday morning. And then again on Sunday, the Giants will wrap up their 2025 season against the Dallas Cowboys. And we will be back on Monday morning with the New York Giants game balls and gassers on offense, defense, and special teams after their game against the Cowboys. And then next week, folks, stay tuned. Keep it here on Giants WFAN on Twitter, because we understand that the Giants will be having their wrap-up with the players on Monday morning, the day after their Cowboys game. I am contemplating doing a season wrap-up show on Monday night. Instead of next Wednesday, moving the show to Monday night to wrap up the season. However, if the general manager, Joe Shane, and the Giants front office decides that they're going to kind of wait an extra day to give their wrap-up and their review and their news, we may have to wait till Tuesday or Wednesday for the show. So I'm not sure when our next live show is going to be. It could be next Monday or this Monday coming up. It could be Tuesday. It could be Wednesday. I just don't know right now. I really want to make it news-oriented. I want to make it the day that news comes out of the building so that you guys will have the most to talk about and the most to listen to and the most to discuss. I don't really want to do a program if there's no headline coming out of the building. So let's see how that works out. Again, I'm at Giants WFAN on Twitter. I promise to keep you posted as we learn those details coming up this weekend. So that'll do it for tonight. Once again, thanks for joining us on the program. I'm Paul Dottino. We will see you next time on the Big Blue Breakdown, not kickoff, the Big Blue Breakdown live. So long, everybody.